lost him for a second. That would be
What's up,
dangerous.
wrestling fans? Jeff Upson. I'm going to be alongside Tristan Warner. This is the first time Tristan and I have been on the air together, so this is going to be a real doozy here. We're on the college podcast. High school season's kind of over. We still have team duels. We still have the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic and other things, but right now we're in full on NCAA mode right now. I got the Happy St. Patrick's Day to you, Tristan, because I got the PA Power Green on today. I see you're not rocking anything green. I don't know what the deal is with that. Just that. Okay, underneath. There we go. I like it. And it's also funny because we have these little name cards on the screens, and under mine it says Jeff Upson at PA Power Wrestle on Twitter. You refuse to be on social media, so it has nothing. It just says Tristan Warner on it, so that's kind of cool. You're just like a invisible ghost. And I appreciate you being here tonight because you should be somewhere else. Isn't that right, Tristan?
That's right. Thanks for having me on. Like you said, it's hard to believe this is the first time we've actually done a podcast together now that I've been helping you out with this for, I'd say, 4 years now.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm supposed to be at the District 3 Training Center, brand new, booming wrestling club out of the Harrisburg area, run by some Central Dauphin alums like yourself, Jeff. Shout out to Brent Ziders, the president, for giving me the night off to hop on here with you. Interesting how much affiliation as a Cumberland Valley alum that I now have with multiple businesses run by Central Dauphin guys.
It's weird.
Hard to believe. You would never know that Central Dauphin wrestlers, two separate ones, kept me from winning a state title and a Mawa Eastern National title back in 1997 in the Bantam division. So,
who was that back in the 90s? Who was that back in the 90s?
Tony Delago.
Big Tony D.
Out.
Yeah, Tony D is notoriously
great kid.
Great kid. So, well, we appreciate you being here. You have been to the NCAA tournament multiple times, right? How many times was it that you were at the NCAA tournament?
I've been going since I was about 6 years old as a fan.
Okay.
Missed only one or two here and there, and then as a competitor, I went 3 times, and then as a media member, I went twice. So.
Right. So you obviously competing there, covering it, going as a fan. You've kind of been all
in every role.
In every role, right? So that's why I love kind of picking your brain to talk a little bit about preparations for NCAAs. The shock of walking into the arena and seeing the mats and the clocks and the fans and everything. It's just like I can't imagine it. It's probably pretty overwhelming. So it's
definitely interesting because every role, it's definitely different. As a fan, you go as a kid or even as an adult and you're starry-eyed looking at those guys. Like, remember as a kid even like just wanting to go to put my foot on that blue floor, that blue rug down there, just like say I did it. And then many years later was able to, like you said, get down there as a wrestler. And like the first time you go out and warm up on those mats, it's pretty surreal. And then you get out there on the mat and you kind of look around. I mean, especially this year with no fans, but it's not really as, I don't know, it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. It was no different than wrestling at the Southern Scuffle or something like that, or the PA State Tournament, honestly, was more intimidating, I thought. But then, and you get to be a media member. You get to, I think at Madison Square Garden, I was up in the literal, it was like a hanging, supported balcony type thing. I think I was floating in the air up there, like almost could touch the ceiling so high up, getting binoculars out to try to watch these guys and see what the score clock said so I could write my articles, and getting down on the floor to do interviews and stuff like that. That was a lot of fun. So I would say no matter what role you're in, as a fan, a wrestler, or as a coach or a media member, it's you can't beat it either way. It's the best 3 days in wrestling.
It really is the best 3 days in wrestling. And, this is our first year not going in several years. In fact, Madison Square Garden, that was one of our first years covering it as media members. And we were in that kind of, like you said, trellis that just basically hung over the mat. That was amazing. That was an amazing event. I loved it there. St. Louis is great too, though. So, we've got 50 Pennslvania natives going to St. Louis. So 50 wrestlers that are from Pennsylvania are competing in the NCAA tournament for the 2021 year, which is really good, right? We've seen that as high as 56, 55 in the last maybe 5 or 6 years. We've seen it as low as in the lower 40s. So I think this is a good year, and that's even without the Ivy League schools where we probably would have had many more. So 50 guys, and here's what I like about this year, Tristan. I look at the quality of these 50 guys. I really do think we're going to see a lot of All-Americans from Pennsylvania because we look at the seedings of these guys. We have a ton of top 4, top 10 seeds that are from Pennsylvania. I'm really excited to see how we do as a state when when it's all said and done on Saturday night.
I completely agree. I think looking through these seeds, and we're going to dive deeper into each weight class here in the coming minutes, but like you said, there's a lot of top heavy guys. You got your Spencer Lees and your Sammy Sassos that are PA natives that are #1 seeds, but you got a lot of guys as you comb through these brackets. And this year, more than any year, I think you're going to see guys with lower seeds that are going to be making the podium just because these guys have wrestled such a small sample size this season that, these seeds are kind of based off of last year. They're kind of based off of things guys did maybe in the first week of January. Some of these guys have wrestled, 5 matches on the whole year. It's kind of a crapshoot when you look at the seeds. So I don't think that they mean a whole lot. You're going to see a lot of upsets, in my opinion. And I think you're going to see guys with lower seeds making the podium. So, it's not one of those years where if you're not seeded in the top 12, that I would say you don't have a great shot. I think we're going to be looking at guys as low as in the 20 seeds that, they fall nicely in the bracket or they get one upset win. And there's plenty of Pennsylvania guys in each of these weights that kind of fit that category for me. So, like I said, we'll dive deeper into that here when we start going through each weight class.
I liked what you said, crapshoot, and a lot of these brackets, like if it wasn't for the Big Ten championships, we would have came into this with like, I'm not really sure where these guys actually fit in the pecking order, right? Because it is kind of a crapshoot. Lack of matches, lack of tournaments, all these different things kind of made it difficult to seed the tournament, but also to kind of predict it. And I agree with you. This year, unlike any others, we're going to see a lot of, quote, upsets on paper, right? Because maybe a 16 over an 8 or whatever it is. And you're going to have a lot of those because, the seedings are just, they're kind of, a little bit of a crapshoot. So I'm excited to just, see where all these guys end up. But, you look at the top, there's a lot of #1 guys, right? We got Spencer Lee, obviously, at 125. We got Sammy Sasso, 149. Mikey Kemmer at 174. So we're excited, but we're also, and we look at Trent Hidley, Hayden Hidley, and those guys. There's a lot of guys that I think can really make some noise in St. Louis and finish in the top 8 All-American status. So Tristan, let's jump into the brackets right now. So we're going to switch over to the brackets. We're going to put them on the screen so you can see them. Let's start at 125 pounds. So, of course, Spencer Lee's #1, 7-0 on the year. The NCAA put out a tweet today that said it was like 13 minutes and 54 seconds was like his total time on the mat this year, which is, insane when you think of a college match being 7 minutes. He only spent 13 minutes and 7 matches. That's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because he's wasting little time, destroying his opponents, but it's also a bad thing. What if he does go, a full 7 minutes? What's his lungs like? what are his legs like? And there's all kinds of speculation going on whether Spencer's injured or not. There was like serious. You go in the Hawkeye Wrestling forum and there's conspiracy theorists out there that are saying, oh, Spencer's knees, it's torn off, like it's gone. They're getting lip readers to go in and say and interpret what he was saying. And I don't know, Tristan. What do you think? Is Spencer Lee hurt? And even if he is that going to really affect the way he wrestles here?
To be honest, I don't know whether he's hurt or not, but if I'm Spencer Lee, I think he's going to go out there with the exact same mindset no matter what. I mean, the only difference in his wrestling might be just to try to protect that knee a little bit, if that is the case. But I mean, this is a guy we saw, that infamous match with now his teammate DeSanto in high school where, controversial call at the end. He lost that last match, but even there, I mean, DeSanto was in the top 5 in the country. If you're going that close with somebody wrestling with a torn ACL with one knee, this is a guy that can go out there and still win this bracket, even not at 100%. And I think most people would agree with that. So, like I said, the only thing that might affect is 1, maybe his bonus point scoring, or 2, just his durability. But, it doesn't necessarily make a huge impact if he's going to go out there and, I think it was Rayvon Foley last week. He threw down and pinned him in 24 seconds.
Yeah,
so,
right.
That'll be interesting to see if he is injured. In fact, if his game plan is I'm going to go out there and try to pin every single kid in a minute, which he's very well capable of doing, to try to get off the mat quicker, or maybe he wants to try to conserve himself a little bit and just keep himself out of any kind of precarious situation. So I think I'm not doubting him to, lose or anything or injury to fall out of this. I think even banged up, he's the best guy by far in this weight. But I don't know. Time will tell and see what kind of approach he takes on his way to the title.
And you know, it's not his first rodeo. He's been there before. You know, he's been in that position before where he's wrestled on Saturday night twice before. You know, he's remember, you know, coming off of a loss to Seabass at the Big Tens, and then coming in and winning the tournament after, you know, Jack Mueller beat Seabass, and he's come in with much greater adversity, you know, and I don't even know if he is injured at all. I mean, he's still wearing his brace. His knees obviously probably not a full 100% because of the injury, the preconditions that he's had and has gone through. But you look at the rest of the field here, and there is such a huge gap between him and the rest of the field. I mean, look what he did in the Big Ten finals, you know, a Tech Fall. I look at this and I say, okay, Devin Schroeder's the 9 seed, you know, Foley's the 8th seed. Brody Teske, are you kidding me? Is the 5th seed? That's the guy who couldn't win a match at Penn State. Like he's the 5th seed, and all of a sudden you look and you're like, okay. I look at this and I look at the other wrestlers from Pennsylvania. Zurich Storm from Campbell is a 29th seed. He's 8-5. He's a guy who's transferred from NC State, now at Campbell. New Oxford, Pennsylvania native, same high school as Jordan Conaway, who wrestled at Penn State and was an All-American. Jarrett Lane from Lehigh, Southern Columbia product, 2-time state champ out of Southern Columbia, now at Lehigh. He's 8-0 on the year, won the EIAA, and you look at him, and he's the 14, but he has a tough match with a Big Ten opponent, Eric Barnett from Wisconsin in the first round, and Gage Curry from American, who's from North Hills, 4-time state medalist, never won a state title for North Hills. He's got the 6th seed, Jacob Camacho from NC State, who we've seen him a lot. I feel like we've seen a lot of the ACC guys a lot here this year. I don't know why, but maybe it's because they're always on the network. But I feel like I've seen Sam Latona wrestle a whole bunch, and I really didn't know a whole lot about him before this year, you know, Tristan. So it's kind of interesting to see where these other Pennsylvania wrestlers really stack up with the bracket.
Yeah, definitely. And no disrespect to any of the other wrestlers in this weight class, because there's some actual legit studs here. It's just Lee is so far above at this point. So that was just to clarify that point. But yeah, like you said, I like a couple of these Pennsylvania guys. Curry has been around for a long time. He's got a pretty tough draw right out of the gate with Camacho. I don't know that that's going to shake out in his favor, but he's one of those guys that could get hot in the consolations, I think. Jarrett Lane, I think, could very well win his first match or beyond. He's a guy that's he's down a weight class this year, I believe, from 33. So he's probably a pretty big 25-pounder, or at least just is finally able to get down to his natural weight. So sometimes guys like that end up making a splash at the NCAA tournament because, you know, he hasn't really got a shot at wrestle at the postseason. And there's really nothing to lose this year, I would say. Some of these guys, you know, in a typical season, the NCAA tournament, like I said in the beginning about how it's kind of scary out there, typically some of these guys are kind of afraid to make a mistake because of the stakes being so high. But thinking about it this year, you know, these guys get another year. This year is almost like a free trial at the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see at least I would predict that you're going to have guys out there with a little bit of a different mindset, just kind of throwing the kitchen sink at them a little bit more. Not to say they're going to wrestle sloppy, but just go out there and let it fly a little bit more than maybe they would have. So I think all three of these other Pennsylvania guys in this bracket, not a guarantee that we're going to see any of them on the podium by any stretch, but I would be surprised if any of them went 0-2. I think we're going to see a couple wins from these guys, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Jarrett Lane on the podium.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, where we're not going to see these guys probably go 0-2, but, you know, win a couple matches in the wrestleback. Let's look at the overall bracket. What do you like here? Who do you like coming out to the, you know, quarterfinals and semifinals? I'll start. You know, I think Spencer's going to come out, you know, Thursday night into Friday morning, be in the quarterfinals. Rayvon Foley, maybe Devin Schroeder. You know, I think those two will probably be in that first round. Spencer doesn't even know who he's wrestling yet. He's waiting the winners in the pigtail round. I probably think you'll see Cody Russell on Thursday night. Brody Teske, you know, as a 5 seed, he's 12-1. I don't know. I'm not sold on him. I guess from watching him at Penn State, I'm not sure that he's the guy to beat here. I think Drew Hildebrandt from Central Michigan is. So I like him. And on the bottom half, Brandon Courtney from Arizona State. I'm not necessarily sold on him yet either. I mean, Dylan Ragusan from Michigan, he looked decent against Spencer in the Big Tens, and if he brings that same tenacity with him to St. Louis, I think he can really surprise a few people. I'm not going to sleep on Taylor Lamont, another guy who's down from 133 to 125. He has a big Greco background, but I like him as well. Robbie Howard and Heinzelman as a first-round match is an interesting one, a classic Penn State-Ohio State match in the first round. And then the question mark for me is Sam Latona. Can he keep this kind of Cinderella story of a year going and potentially make it out to the semifinals and potentially finals, Tristan? Your thoughts on 125?
Yeah, I agree with you on the top part. I think you're going to see Lee, and I'm taking Schroeder to be the other quarterfinalist there. I think he had a rough start to the year. I think I heard he was hurt, and I think he's kind of back to the form that he was in last year, as a Big Ten finalist and ranked top 10 all year last year. So I think he's going to beat Foley and be in the quarters. Lee has never really had any problems with Schroeder, but I think he's a guy that could end up placing pretty high on the backside. When he's on his game, he's pretty darn good. Honestly, from 5 down, I think any one of those guys, maybe not Kaler from Oregon State, but I could see the winner of Mastro Giovanni and Michael DiAgostino being in the quarters. I could see either one of them beating Teskey. I think Teskey does have a win over Mastro Giovanni from earlier in the year, if I read that right. But, that Mastro Giovanni kid is a really talented young kid. And he's coached by John Smith, and company over there at Oklahoma State. So I wouldn't at all be shocked to see him kind of peak at the right time. And I wouldn't be shocked at all to see a 21 seed in the quarters there. I do like Hildebrandt making to the quarters. I wouldn't be shocked to see Jarrett Lane in the quarters either. I think he's good enough to beat Brandon Courtney, but I think it'll be a good match either way, even if he doesn't. In that next bottom little pod there, I think that's your toughest little round of 16 matchup there. I think in my bracket that I filled out, kind of in my head, I had Camacho in the finals all the way, coming from the 6th seed. But I think his toughest test along the way is going to be that. I called him Ragusan, but you called him Ragusan from Michigan. I think that kid is pretty darn good as a freshman also. I think if Ragusan is able to beat Camacho there, he could run the gauntlet all the way there too. So no disrespect to those guys down below. I like Lamont. I like Heinzelman. Latona, those guys are all tough. One of those guys is going to emerge into the semis there on the bottom half. But I think I see Camacho making his way to the finals to wrestle Spencer in the finals. And I know he's lost twice to Latona. He really closed the gap that second match. It went into the rideout, I think. I just think Papalizio, I think he's probably the best coach in the country, one of them, in my opinion. And I think it's hard to beat a good guy 3 times in a row. I could see him making a run here. Could be totally wrong, but could be my bold prediction.
A bold prediction from you, Cotton. And you look at how'd you call him? Ragusan. Ragusan. Yeah, I kind of like the way you said it better. I mean, this is we're definitely going to talk about this in the group text, the pronunciation here, because I'm
sure I'm wrong. It's all good.
I mean, I've heard Shane Sparks say it, but I've also heard Shane Sparks say Strachey when Carter has told me himself it's Strachey. So like whatever, let's just call him whatever we
call him Strachey if you want.
Hey, whatever. So I think regardless, you're going to see Spencer come away with a title. Brandon Courtney coming out from the bottom, Camacho, Latona. I mean, I like you said, it's kind of a crapshoot at the bottom half. I'm not really 100% sold on that. And you had mentioned Mastro Giovanni from Blair Academy. He's a stud. We hosted him at the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic, and he's a really good kid and also a pretty talented wrestler. So let's go to 133 pounds, where we have at the top is Dayton Fix. And of course, Dayton Fix is the guy who did not win an NCAA title because of a guy named Nick Suriano, but he's 9-0 on the year. Of course, he had to sit out a little bit for those PEDs that he had, drank the drink from the fridge that was not supposed to be him, but he is there at the top. Cole Roan from Bloomsburg, a Benton, PA native, right? You should remember the name Cole Roan, right? Because I believe Mike Roan, the other Roan, was around your age, wasn't he, Tristan?
Yeah, I think he was in my grade.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Cole from Bloomsburg, he's 5-2. He's the 32nd seed. He's gonna have Bryce West from Northern Illinois in that first round, and a winner gets Dayton Fix. So not a great draw for him. But you look at the rest of the field, and this is very interesting because we've seen the same old names over and over again. More specifically, Mickey Philippi from Derry area, who's now at Pitt, Austin Asano from Exeter, who's now at Iowa, and Corbin Myers from Virginia Tech by way of Edinburgh, who's from right down the road from you, Boiling Springs.
Bubble
You know,
Town.
yeah, the Bubblers, and Corbin Myers is we saw him win an ACC title, beating Mickey Philippi in the finals. Very good match that he had. He looks like a good, savvy veteran, a guy who's been there, done that. Another one who's interesting to me is Ryan Sullivan from West Virginia. He was originally at Pitt, transferred to West Virginia. He was from Shaler, was a state champion, got injured his senior year. He's had a good year. I think he's going to have his hands full, though, with Zach Redding from Iowa State in that first round matchup. There's a lot of talent here, but it's just a matter of, okay, the matchups for Mickey Philippi, because you look at it from a PA perspective. Mickey Philippi, Austin Sando, and Corbin Myers are all guys that no doubt can finish top 8. But, are they going to run into each other? Where are they going to, end up in the wrestlebacks? And, how far can they advance through in the championship round, Tristan? That's my real question, is how far can Mickey Philippi go? How far can Austin Asano take it? Because Corbin Myers is sitting at the 3rd seed. That's a pretty good position from him.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting seeding too, I would say. I think a lot of people probably would have guessed that DeSanto would have been seeded 3 and Myers 4. But I guess once again, that's like we said, it's a crapshoot this year. Myers is undefeated. DeSanto has that one loss to RBY. But I mean, if you look back on years past, obviously DeSanto is more of a household name. Myers has been to the NCAA tournament a few times, lost. I would say maybe went like 1-2, 2-2, kind of like that, and then was hurt last year. But he has looked amazing this year so far. 8-0 undefeated, like you said, has that win over Philippi. So I think he's a guy that's going to go really far in this bracket. I like his draw as well. Not that Matt Schmidt from Missouri isn't tough, but I think Myers, just by the way he's been wrestling this season, I think he should pretty much be a lock to be in the semis against most likely Roman Bravo Young, which will be obviously quite a challenge. But I think Myers is wrestling his best that I've ever seen right now this season. DeSanto and Philippi, I think all eyes will be on that all Pennsylvania quarterfinal there. DeSanto, I would say, didn't look kind of himself at the Big Ten tournament. I don't know if, I don't know what's going on there. He's obviously still a stud. I don't know that he looked his same dominant self in some of those matches I watched. But Philippi is a guy that can slow you down and is very hard to score on. So that could be a very interesting match.
Yeah, and so a few things that I'll touch on that you kind of mentioned. One is, I think RBY has just widened the gap between a lot of guys. I think him and Dayton Fix, should they make it to the finals, which I believe they will, is going to be a one heck of a match. RBY has just really taken it to a new level, in my opinion, and you see that with widening the gap against Austin DeSanto. The other thing is, I agree with you with Austin DeSanto not necessarily looking himself. It looked like his finger was banged up, and that's his pull hand. I don't know if that injury is something that's preventing him from doing the things that he wants to do. Mickey Philippi, we know, can win close matches. The problem is he can lose close matches as well. And he's really got, when he opens up, now let's not forget, Mickey Philippi has a win over Dayton Fix in his career in Pittsburgh. That was a great win for him. However, he's taken some losses where you're saying, man, if he would just open up. And I do believe that it'll probably be those two in the quarterfinals with a DeSanto and Philippi match at about 346. I believe that's probably going to be the case. And, I'm not sure who comes out on top of that because, the way Austin's been wrestling and Philippi can slow down a Mack truck and, he's really tough from top and, he can sneak in a takedown. I think he can win that match, but it's just, I don't know. And then you look at the bottom with Corbin Myers. Again, you're on the same side as RBY, but I do believe it is Corbin Myers who makes it out to the semifinals. I do believe he's going to get there. Darren Miller from Bucknell, who's from Kiski area, was a state champion his senior year. He's the 26th seed. He has a very tough wrestler, Lucas Bird from Illinois, who I got to see a lot of in high school because he went to LaSalle, Cincinnati out in Ohio, and he was at Powerade. He was at Escape the Rock. So I really like him, and he looked good at the Big Ten tournament. But Darren Miller, he's going to have his hands full there. I could see maybe potentially Lucas Bird, sneaking out and pushing it with maybe RBY. But, I think when you look at this from a, 25,000-foot view, this is all RBY and Dayton Fix's weight class. Everyone else is just kind of fighting for that third through, eighth place. Would you agree with that, Tristan?
I would probably agree. I think Myers can give Roman Bravo Young a pretty good tussle if he keeps wrestling the way he's been wrestling so far this season. We saw him beat Philippi, which was surprising in my eyes, but like I said, I think he's back to form. And this was a kid that in high school, if I'm remembering right, I think he won Super 32. I want to say is that the right? Am I
Who
thinking of the right guy?
who are you
Corbin
talking?
Myers.
Yeah, Corbin Myers. No, he won a state title one year.
I thought okay, maybe I'm wrong, but I remember him coming out of high school as a stud. I remember watching him thinking like, this guy like doesn't maybe do a whole lot, at least from the few matches I saw, but he just keeps finding ways to win. Kind of similar to Mickey Philippi, but I don't know. He's really turned it on this year. He's gotten bonus points in a lot of matches, so he's been turning people on top. I would have to say it's going to be a fixed Bravo Young final, but I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Corbin Myers make that a pretty challenging semifinal against Bravo Young.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, you're gonna probably not gonna see guys blow people away, but you are gonna see. I just think the gap between RBY and the rest of the field on that bottom half is a little bit higher. The way he's been able to get to his offense is just really incredible. This year, he's made so many adjustments. So, if you had to pick Dayton Fix or RBY, who would you pick in the finals there, or who are you picking? Because you filled out like 9 brackets, so who are you picking?
I'm gonna have to go with Fix. I think Fix will win it.
Okay.
Just
All
a
right.
hunch.
Just a
But
hunch.
I could really see it go either way. What about
Okay.
you?
Yeah, I'll go Fix just because he's been in that spot before. He's been in the finals before, and I don't know, but I think you could flip a coin and that one could go either way. I really do. I think they're.
I think Bravo Young is supremely talented enough to win that
Oh, for sure.
bracket and wouldn't be at all surprised. I feel like Fix is kind of that guy that you have to see him get beat before you. It's kind of like Gabe Dean and Nichols scenario.
Yeah, true,
You know,
true.
you almost have to see the younger guy take it to him and beat him to see it happen.
That's a good analogy there. I like that. The Dean and Nickel analogy. Let's go up to 141 pounds, where Pennsylvania really doesn't have a ton here. In fact, we only have 2 guys in the weight class, and they're 2 guys that know each other very, very well, and that's Cole Matthews from Pitt and Brian Courtney from Virginia. One's from Reynolds, one's from Athens. They've wrestled in the state tournament before. They've wrestled in the ACC tournament before. These guys know each other kind of like the back of their hands. All you can do is throw in Max Muir into this weight, and you'd have the 3-way tango that they had at the state tournament several years ago. Cole Matthews is the 16th seed. He's gonna have Mackenzie Bell from Ryder, who's the 17th on that 39 bout number. Winner there is probably gonna get the Riddler, Jaden Ironman. So tough draw for Cole Matthews if you win that first one. Brian Courtney is gonna get DJ Lauren from Fresno State, who's very, very tough, 11-1 on the year, 13th seed. Brian Courtney, has had his share of ups and downs throughout his career at Virginia. So, I'm not saying I'm expecting a whole lot from Courtney, but Matthews on the other hand, I think if he gets hot in the wrestlebacks, he could maybe turn it up a little bit. I don't know, because you look at how deep this weight class is. 141 is so deep. You talk about Jaden Ironman. I mean, when Chad Redd is an 8th seed here, that's a deep weight class, because Chad Redd's a 2-time All-American. You got Dom Demas from Oklahoma as a 5th seed, a guy who's been right there with the rest of them. Real Woods is a 21 seed, so like it's just, I mean, and then you throw in Tariq Wilson, and it's just I don't know. I just, there's not a lot of room for other guys like Cole Matthews to come in. Would you agree there, Tristan?
Yeah, like you said, I could definitely see Cole's a gamer and he can beat guys that are ranked ahead of him, no doubt. But it's going to be tough in a weight like this where you're going to have to pull off 2, 3, upsets with him being the 16 seed just to even probably make it to the blood round. So I would say it's definitely going to be challenging. I could see him winning that first round match against Bell, who was kind of a relatively unknown for me until he pulled an upset over Alan Hart at the MAC tournament. So I could see him pulling off that first win, but like you said, he's going to have his hands full with Ironman. And then he would drop down to take on. I definitely think he could have a second winnable match, but then it's going to start getting pretty tough, getting closer to the blood round. But I mean, that's at every weight. So. Yeah, and I think even when you look deeper into the bracket, one guy that really stands out to me, and there's a couple guys like this, is Real Woods, who's coming in as a 21 seed, just basically on one loss. He got cradled and pinned in the Pac-12 tournament by Willets, who he ironically drew in the first round. But that was a guy, if you remember last year, had one overtime loss in 30 matches, and it was to Luke Pletcher, and
Right.
he almost even won that match. So that's a guy that is incredibly talented that basically hasn't had much of a season this year. Those Stanford kids went through a lot of adversity in the offseason, in the spring and fall. And to be honest, I don't know how much training they even got to do this year. They kind of just got thrown out there right before the conference tournament. So rusty might be the word, but that's a guy that if he's on at this tournament, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see him in the finals. He was right there, one or two last year.
Yeah, I mean, he was right there with Luke Pletcher, like you said, that first match of the year with Stanford versus Ohio State, and if Real Woods comes out from that first round match, which I do believe he will, and sees Demas, I think that's going to be a can't miss match, right? So there's, I mean, like I said, there's just so much depth here, and you just look at it and you're like, I just, I don't know who to pick, because I think you can, between Ironman, Lee, and Sebastian Rivera, I think all three are very much capable of winning that title on Saturday night. But then you throw in guys like Tariq Wilson as well, and you're thinking, okay, if they get hot at the right time, I think clearly, Ironman, Lee, and Seabass are kind of in their own tier of possible NCAA champions. And then I think it gets a little bit, there's a little bit of a gap between the rest of them. If Ironman wrestles like he did at the Big Tens, I think he'll end up winning it. But Nick Lee was very, very close to beating him, and probably could have made a few more adjustments. And there was a lot of talk about whether he should have, not cut him and continued riding him to eliminate the riding time point and get a takedown. You're coached by one of the best in the world to ever do it. So I would probably, take my coach's advice in that situation. But if I'm Nick Lee, you're feeling it, man. You're like, I'm right there. I know what I need to do to win that match. What do you think in the finals? Let's go semifinals. Who do you have in the semifinals here at 141 pounds?
I think the seeds will hold true unless Real Woods is that real one dark horse wild card that I have. Like I said, I wouldn't be at all shocked to see him out there. But I guess if you just kind of have to go on what we saw of him at Pac-12, that maybe he's not 100% back to his game. In that case, I would say you'll see Ironman and Tariq. And Tariq, I think, is a real interesting guy at this weight because we haven't really seen him much at 141. I think the last 2 years he was at 33, and I'm guessing, I mean, he's a really tall guy. He's probably pulling a lot of weight, and I think he reached the blood round 2 seasons ago after that third place finish. And then this year he's been really good at 41, up a weight, undefeated, super athletic, can score a lot of points, as we saw that Cinderella third place run he had a few years ago. He was throwing points all over the board, even against guys like Seth Gross. So
Yeah.
If we see him full of energy out there at 41, like I said, he's another guy I wouldn't at all be surprised to see in the finals. But I guess just going off of what I know, I guess I would have to say it'll be an Ironman final in the top half. And, obviously a Penn State fan I am, but Sebastian Rivera is as much of a gamer as anybody in this entire tournament. I was at the Big Tens last year, which were in his home state of New Jersey, and he was just came out of a gauntlet of a bracket and won it, and he just was a guy that you could tell was absolutely thriving from the limelight and the adrenaline and the hype of the match. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Ironman Rivera final, and I honestly wouldn't even be surprised to see Rivera win it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say you're wrong there, because, like you said, he kind of thrives in that type of environment. And last year, and you look at what he was, or not last year, 2 years ago in Pittsburgh, and you're saying, well, okay, you fell, after winning the Big Tens, you fell, and you that Spencer Lee, Sebastian Rivera rematch that never happened. Yeah, I mean, him, especially up at 141, is a completely different animal. He looks great at the Big Ten tournament despite not winning it. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him come away with it. I know that's not a bold statement by any stretch of the imagination, but Ironman, I just feel like, I don't know, there's something about him that you just feel like it's going to be hard for him not to win it. I feel like he just finds a way to win at any time. Like he's so good from top, and he just, I don't know, he just finds ways to get it done, in my opinion. Let's go up to 149 pounds, where the young bull, Sammy Sasso, man. Sammy Sasso from Nazareth, Pennsylvania at Ohio State, 12-0 on the year. Is it hard to believe that this is his first like official NCAA tournament? You know, it's like it's weird because he didn't have a tournament last year, but he comes in as the number 1 seed this year, having won the Big Ten title. How about your boy Luke Nichter from Chambersburg? Wins his state title last year at like what 170, and then all of a sudden
60.
160. I'm sorry, 160 comes down to 149. Which is crazy. He beats Clayton Orey from Lower Dolphin in the finals, drops down to 149 for his first year at Drexel. Like I just can't believe he's down at that weight. But he's there at the number 24 seed. Max Murin from Iowa, 4-3 on the year, and you look at, he got pinned by Sasso. Didn't have a great Big Ten tournament. He's the 12 seed. I think pretty favorable for him. And then Cody Kamara from Kent State, who's from Freedom area out in the WPIL. He's the 29 seed at 12-6. Jimmy Hoffman from Lehigh, a Hazleton state finalist for Hazleton back in the day, 4-4. He's the 22nd seed. Sammy Sasso is just so incredibly good at everything he does, right? We know what he's capable of doing. We saw it at the Big Ten tournament. We've seen it throughout the year, last year, battling with Pat Lugo. I just have a feeling this is Sammy's to lose, right? And even with Austin O'Connor, at the bottom half, I still think Sammy Sasso is the guy here. The question for me is, can a guy like Max Murin break through and earn an All-American finish? I just don't know. If it's, if we're looking at the last couple weeks, I don't think so. If he wrestles like he did at Big Tens, it's not going to happen. But we know what he's capable of doing. We know we've seen him wrestle at very high levels. It's hard to say which Max Murin shows up, if that makes sense, Tristan.
Yeah, 49 is definitely an interesting weight class. I like a lot of these Pennsylvania kids here. I agree with you about Sasso. It's kind of crazy. Like you said, he's a number 1 seed. He's never even been to the tournament before. Should have been there last year, obviously, if it wasn't canceled. But I do think that he's going to be emerging from the top half of the bracket. I think these guys on the bottom maybe have a little bit, at least the semi is going to be tougher down there with O'Connor and Mahler. Both those guys are undefeated and have both looked really good this year. I think that middle quadrant there that you just kind of mentioned where Murin is in, those guys are kind of going to beat each other up to get to that semifinal. So between Murin, Levet, and Llewellyn, those guys are all pretty tough, and Mitch Moore is even pretty solid.
Yeah.
So I think those guys are going to kind of beat each other up to get to that semi. I would probably have to go with Llewellyn, but I wouldn't be surprised. Levet has been really impressive, and he's just he's really good on top. A little bit tricky to wrestle, I think, and now he's up a couple weights from last year, so he's an interesting wild card there too. The top part of the bracket, Sasso and Jaden Abbas could be very interesting. I think I do think Sasso will emerge there and get to the finals, but I think he'll have an interesting test from Abbas if he gets there. The legend Lammer kid from Cal Poly that Luke Nichter drew in the first round is pretty solid, and I think has a win over Abbas earlier this year. So that could be interesting. But if Abbas does make it to the quarters, I think him and Sasso, 2 guys that are right around the same age, that could be an interesting bout.
And it's funny you say that, because I was going to say I'm not going to sleep on Yaya Thomas from Northwestern either at the 25th seed. But, him and Abbas are going to be going at it in that first round. Like you said, the Stanford, the rust, is it real? Is it, how much have they been training? I like Yaya Thomas, but I think that should be a good match. And I agree with you with Ridge Lovett. I think he's probably one of the most improved wrestlers of the NCAA this year, in my opinion. Ridge Lovett has just looked great all season. I think he ends up getting out. I do. I think he beats Llewellyn from Oklahoma State, and I think he ends up making it out to the semifinals. But what do you make of Max Murin? Should Max Murin win his first match, lose to Lovett, and then come back? He could be potentially looking at like a Cannon Store in the consolation rounds, or even a Bryce Anderonian from Virginia Tech, who's really tough. We got to see him in high school a lot. He was out the Powerade tournament, or even Jarrett Deegan from Iowa State. I mean, my gosh, there's just landmines everywhere. It's like, can Murin actually bust through and make it to the top 8? That's the question in my mind.
Yeah, just doing my little quick calculation here, scrolling through the bracket. If Murin does lose to Lovett there in the about 228, if he's able to beat the 2 kids that would be seated lower than him to get out to that blood round, I think he actually gets probably the most favorable blood round loser or the quarterfinal loser there in the blood round in Jonathan Milner from App
Mm.
State, who is definitely tough, but that's a guy that typically I think most people would agree that Murin is favored to win that match, even if the seeds here in the NCAA tournament don't depict it. Murin had a couple losses there at Big Ten, but those guys are wrestling a tough schedule. Not that Milner is anything to, not prepare for or anything, but I think of all guys losing in the quarterfinals, that would be the guy, if I was Murin, that I would want to see in the blood round. So, I could eat my words, obviously, but I would say losing to whoever loses there between Murin and Lovett, I think they have a decent shake there on their way back into the blood round.
Again, interesting that you brought up Milner because I have Van Brill from Rutgers making
I,
it out
I,
there.
I was just gonna say. Now that I look further, Van Brill Iron Man did at Big Tens, beat like four seeded kids on his way back to third. And Rutgers has a history of just having these random kids like Kenny Theobald and one of the Heilmans who just they're guys that are like either on the cusp, Parati, or not even seated very high at all, and they just turn it on at nationals. They just kind of thrive, like I said about Rivera. So yeah,
Right.
Van Brill is honestly a tougher matchup than Milner, I think, if Murin gets
Same.
to that point.
Yeah. I mean, as you were saying it, I was looking. I'm like, yeah. In my bracket, I had Van Brill coming out, but Andonian from Virginia Tech is another guy who I think could beat Cannon Store and end up in the quarterfinals at 355. Yeah. I mean, it's Austin O'Connor is the guy who I think a lot of pressure's on to get out from there and get to the finals, which I do believe he will, and I do believe we'll have a Sasso. I think the seeds will hold, but there's definitely a lot of landmines here. I think Sasso is really the only guy from PA that I'm comfortable saying is going to All-American. Murin, although I like what you're saying with his path to the All-American round, yeah, maybe a little bit more favorable, but there's just so many good guys here that are just, they're going to get beat early and then have to battle back like him. So we will see here in a couple days. Let's go up to 157 pounds, where your top seed is none other than Ryan Deacon from Northwestern, who just looked amazing at the Big Tens. And my gosh, him and Hayden Hidley have had back and forth. They've had, close matches both in freestyle and folk style. But, Ryan Deacon just looks like he's on a different level. I don't know. I just picked up on that at the Big Ten tournament. Let's look at the Pennsylvania wrestlers. Luca Frenzy from Lehigh, 4-3 on the year. He's a Becca product out of Quakertown. Wyatt Sheets, he draws him in that first round from Oklahoma State, which is a very tough draw for him. Justin McCoy from Virginia did not get a favorable draw because he's going to have Vandermeer from Stanford, the 17th seed. That's going to be a tough match. And should he win that, he gets Deacon right away. I mean, I think I'd rather be the 24 down there, the 24 seed, wrestle Kendall Coleman and potentially get out that way. I don't know. But Justin McCoy, again, is a guy who I think can battle back pretty well. Caleb Young from Iowa via Punxsutawney. He has Licking from Nebraska in that first match, match number 74. The one that I have circled, highlighted, and asterisked is 75. Andrew Soniglia from Navy, Brady Burgee from Penn State. I really am high on Soniglia. 8-1 on the year. I got to see him out throughout high school when he was at Nazareth, Notre Dame, Green Pond, and on the national level at Ironman. I really like Soniglia, and I think he's only gotten better since out of high school. I think he's going to push Berge. I really do think he is, and I think he has a chance to get a win there with a chance to wrestle Caleb Young. And, you have that Caleb Young. Should Caleb Young and Brady Burgee come out from there, I think that's a toss-up. And Caleb Young's a guy who's an All-American. So, the Pennsylvania guys on the top half, look pretty good. And then you go on the bottom half, and it's Hayden Hidley, who really, I mean, David Carr is that guy that I think is really his toughest battle there. I'm not saying Brayton Lee's not going to do well, and I'm not saying that, even a guy like Will Luan from Michigan isn't going to surprise some people, but it just seems like it's Hidley and Deacon poised to be in the finals. Tristan, I just, that's the way I have it laid out.
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting weight class. I like what you said about bout 75. It's actually the second match in these brackets I can think of off the top of my head where it's a Penn State against a Navy kid right off the bat, and it's a really good match. As we'll get to at 197, Kozer and Mike Beard is going to be a good one of those two schools going at it. But looking through Cerniglia's results, he really only has that one loss, and that came to I just had it up. Jaden Fisher from Bucknell. So that was a little bit of a head scratcher, but all the rest of them, he's been pretty dominant. He's had 3 techs, a pin, 2 majors. He's looked pretty good. Hasn't been super tested. So Berge will obviously be a really good test for him there. But whoever wins that one will obviously get a tough one with Caleb Young right there in the next round. So that's kind of a gauntlet right there for all of those guys involved. I think, like you said, Deacon is the class of the weight class here, especially in the top half. I don't see him having much of a challenge getting out to the finals, really. Even whoever wins out of that quadrant, I think Deacon's just in a class above. The bottom half is a little interesting. I definitely think you'll see a Carr Hidley semifinal, and I think Hidley has gotten the better of Carr the last time they've wrestled. So personally, obviously rooting for Hayden. Hopefully he makes it to the finals and gives Deacon all he can handle. He could even pull that out. Who knows? But like you said, from what we've seen so far, Deacon looks super impressive, and especially for a guy who, I don't know if many people know this about him, but I believe he was kind of a walk-on at Northwestern who didn't really have much of a high school pedigree at all. I don't even know if he won a state title out of Colorado. He was just kind of an unknown guy who's just really blossomed there. So, yeah, tough weight class. Couple good kids. One other sleeper I have who's not really a Pennsylvania kid, but I like the Ja'Cory Teamer kid from Arizona State. I think I could see him as an 11 seed upset Brayton Lee and give Carr a really good match in the quarterfinals. That was a kid that came out of high school a couple of years ago. Got to watch him wrestle at high school nationals. I was really impressed by him. So he just has that one loss on the year, but he's looked pretty solid up at 57 this year too.
Yeah, I mean, Ja'Cory Teamer is a guy who has battled with the most of these guys here. You talk about he has a loss to Justin McCoy, so Justin McCoy has a win over Ja'Cory Teamer last year. Even Delvecchia from Ryder, 7-0 at the 4th seed. I think he gets overlooked a lot too. So my question is, I believe Hayden Hidley's going to get to the, obviously to make it All-American. I'm pretty sure he's going to make it to the finals, but the question for me is Caleb Young, Justin McCoy, Andrew Siniglia. Can these guys, make a run? And Caleb Young, I don't know how he has not looked like the Caleb Young of past. I look at him and Murin and I say, what's going on there? Because I think they should be a little bit higher up. You remember that match with Caleb Young and David Carr the first time they wrestled. It was a back and forth. It was a great match, but I feel like David Carr has just kind of elevated his game a little bit. I do believe David Carr will make the semifinals with Hayden Hidley, and I believe Ryan Deacon's going to obviously make the semifinals and then the finals there. The question for me is who's he going to get? Delvecchia, Caleb Young, maybe Brady Berge. I mean, there's a lot of questions there in that quadrant of 74, 75, 76, and 77. I think there's a lot of question marks there. There's going to be a lot of battling going on between those 4 matches, those 8 wrestlers to get into that match at 358. So, 157, obviously, like we said, with Deacon and Hidley being here, I think they're in a tier by themselves. But then you have those David Carrs, maybe even Delvecchia in that same kind of bracket, and even Ja'Cory Teamer, Brayton Lee. Those guys are right there with them. So I think we're going to see a lot of guys that are losing early that we're not expecting to, at 57. So that's going to make it difficult for those Pennsylvania wrestlers that are trying to wrestle back and get into the top 8 there. So any closing thoughts on 157 there, Tristan?
Yeah, I think this, like you just said, this is one of those weight classes, like we mentioned in the beginning, that you're going to see a lot of higher seeds go down early, and then you're going to have a total bracket shakeup. That's kind of what I'm predicting as well. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see for these young guys. Siniglia, super talented, just doesn't have quite the college experience yet, and also has a pretty tough draw with Berge out of the gate, and then Young, and then Delvecchia, and then Deacon. Like that's a pretty tough gauntlet to run, and then even if you just kind of play around with the consolation bracket and see where he could fall, I don't necessarily like all the guys that I'm seeing here. A lot of veteran guys at this weight that have been at this tournament before. So, it'll be really interesting to see, but I definitely wouldn't count him out. He's a really talented young kid.
All right, so let's go up to 165 pounds, where your top seed is the Bull Alex Marinelli from Iowa, All-American. He's the number 1. From Pennsylvania, we got Zach Hartman from Bucknell by way of Bell Vernon. He's 10-0. He is the 5th seed. He draws Roderick Mosley from Gardner-Webb in that first round match. Also, we have Jake Wenzel from Pittsburgh, who is the 3rd seed by way of South Park, 9-1 on the year. He'll be wrestling Barzak from Drexel, who's the 30th seed. Garrett Ninehouse from Purdue, who's a Cannon Mac graduate, two-time state champion, was third the other 2 years in his high school career. He is going to have Peyton Robb from Nebraska in that first match. I think that's going to be a good one. Ethan Smith from Ohio State. He was at Greater Latrobe High School for his first 2 years. He went to Sparrows Point in Maryland. He wrestled in Maryland. He's a Pennsylvania guy through and through from Ohio State. He's the 7th seed there. And really that's all of the Pennsylvania guys, but you look at the rest of the field here. I mean, my gosh, your second seed is Valencia. Your third seed, right? Your third seed is Jake Wenzel, who, has that win over Mekhi Lewis. Injury default, right? There was a lot of Twitter talk about the tweet that Pitt put out about, him beating national champion Mekhi Lewis and by injury default. Mekhi Lewis is a guy who is banged up, and the question is, how healthy can he be? I really do expect him to be in that semifinals match with Alex Marinelli. The question is, can the Bull kind of outlast him, unlike what he did 2 years ago? So I like Jake Wenzel on the bottom half, though. I do think he's going to be able to get out to the quarterfinals, but, you have Cameron Amin down there and Kennedy Monday. My gosh, at the 22nd seed. I mean, talk about some guys that are in, even Keegan O'Toole at the 6th seed from Mizzou. I like him a lot. Joe Lee from Penn State, the 23 seed, didn't have a great Big Ten tournament. Travis Whitlake from Oklahoma State, a very, very savvy wrestler, 16-1, highly ranked recruit out of high school. Anthony Valencia is the guy who I feel like's been here for 9 years. I can't believe he's still around. But you're like, okay, who's going to come out? Who's going to come out from that bottom half? And, if I'm Jake Wenzel, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at, because I'm on the opposite side of both Mekhi Lewis and Alex Marinelli.
Yeah, this is by far my favorite weight class. I got to say, there's so much, there's such an array of things here, but the thing I like the most about it is there's so many young kids that are just, there's no way to know where to seed them or what to predict out of them because they're so young and they have such a small sample size. But just off the top of my head, you got Whitlake, who was going to be a really high seed at Nationals last year before it got canceled. I think he only has a handful of losses in his 2 seasons competing. O'Toole is undefeated as a true freshman, but is supremely talented. Amin, I think, is a guy that's highly overlooked in this weight. He's 9-2, and his only 2 losses are 2-0 to Marinelli and a 1-point loss to, who was it? I just looked it up. To Ethan Smith from Ohio State, 4-3. Other than that, he's beaten most of these other Big Ten guys in the bracket. Ninehouse, obviously. Peyton Robb is also a young guy, so those two draw each other in the first round. And then Hartman hasn't, he made it to the Nationals, I think, 2 years ago, but didn't get to wrestle last year, where he was definitely at least predicted to All-American or make a splash. And then probably the most interesting who knows guy is Shane Griffith.
Yeah, right.
Who came in here last year. I mean, it was good enough to possibly be a national champ. And then I still think he's that good. He just, once again, we talked about that Stanford thing. Are they rusty? Have they trained? Is he injured? I don't know. He got put to his back by Valencia and ended up losing 7-1 in the Pac-12 a few weeks ago. But other than that, he's 6-1. Who really knows? So this is just my favorite weight class, just on the sheer unknown and just the young guys, young talented guys who are unproven but could really make this bracket really exciting.
I mean, anytime you have a national champ, right, a guy who won an NCAA championship as the 4th seed, you know the weight's going to be a little bit jacked up, right? It's not going to go nearly as what you expected, and that's no shade to Jake Wenzel or Anthony Valencia, but they have an All-American before, and Mekhi Lewis not only has All-American, but he's won it. I agree with you with Amin. I think he's a guy who's going to surprise people. Keegan O'Toole, same thing. I think Amin O'Toole come out for that 271. And I do think that Travis Whitlake and Joe Lee is going to be a good first-round matchup, but Whitlake, I could see Whitlake making it to the quarters against Anthony Valencia, to be honest with you. And I'm not sold on Valencia. I think that bottom half is just, pretty wide open. I think Valencia, Wenzel, and then the rest of them can all make it out of that bottom half. I think clearly, you look at Marinelli and Mekhi Lewis and you say that's probably the finals, maybe. I don't know. It's just crazy. Like you said, there's a lot of unknowns there. I like Peyton Hall from WVU. I think he's a pretty tough wrestler. Even, like you said, with Peyton, or not Peyton Hall, with Shane Griffin from Stanford. It's like, okay, you're a guy who at one time was top, potentially top 3 in the nation. You get put to your back, you lose in the Pac-12, but then where can you bounce back, and can you do well here at the NCAA tournament? I think he has a pretty favorable draw into to Marinelli on Friday morning there. So it will be very interesting, and I think you're right. It's probably one of the most exciting brackets of the tournament. If that's not enough for you, though, let's go up to 174 pounds where things really get interesting. Mikey Kemmer from Iowa, Franklin Regional graduate, 4-time state finalist, 1-time champion for Franklin Regional. He's 7-0 in the year. He's your top seed. Jacob Oliver from Edinburgh, who is by way of Huntington, he's there at the 21 seed. Mikey Labriola from Nebraska, Bethlehem Catholic graduate, 11-1. His only loss is to the 3 seed Carter Starocki of Penn State, who is 8-2 as the 3 seed. Man, I mean, you talk about 3 of the top wrestlers in not only the weight but the tournament. Mikey Kemmer, Mikey Labriola, and Carter Starocki. There's just, I mean, you can't find 3 better guys to represent Pennsylvania. I just feel like Mikey Kemmer is the guy. I don't know. I just feel like he is the guy. He's been chomping at the bit. He's been waiting his turn for so long. I just feel like this is his time.
Yeah, I agree. I think Kemmer is going to win the weight class. I think he's the best guy. And Labriola and Starocki are quite a bit younger, at least a couple years younger, and they've got lots of potential here in the coming years as well. But what I would have really liked to have seen was Labriola and Starocki be the 2-3 seed and wrestle each other in an all-PA semifinal. I think that would have been really cool. Demetrius Romero is a 2 seed for Utah Valley. I just don't think he's had the competition. I was looking through his results the other day. Yes, he's undefeated. He had an overtime loss with a kid that WrestleStat had ranked like in the 60s, and he had a couple really close matches. He, at least just from his stats alone, he hasn't done anything to really impress me by, beating on a really good kid. So a shame the way the seeds rolled that way. I think he could have easily been a 4 or 5 or a 6 even, and Labriola, Starocki could have been 2-3, maybe seen each other in the semis. But regardless, I think Starocki is coming out of the bottom there. In fact, I even have on my bracket, I have Starocki against Romero in the semifinals. I think not Demetrius Romero. Let me clarify. The other Romero, Caleb Romero for Ohio State. I think you'll see an all Big Ten semifinal there, and I think Starocki will make the finals out of the bottom half, and then I think obviously Kemmerer makes it from the top.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad prediction whatsoever. And you look at, what are some of the guys who you think can be bracket busters here? Because I look at this, and Logan Massa, the 5th seed, even Bullard from NC State as the 8th seed. Are there any guys here that could potentially, I don't know, upset one of those 3, or do you think those 3 are pretty much locked in? It's just kind of the rest of the field that they're trying to get through here.
The only, I guess, guys I would say that catch my eye as potential bracket busters, they're pretty much all down on the bottom half of the bracket. Yeah. Peyton Mako from Missouri is pretty tough, and all these Missouri kids are coached well. And also, this is like a home match for them. They always seem to wrestle well in St. Louis, at least from what I remember. Mantanona isn't having quite the year that he had last year. He was pretty darn good last year, but 7-7. He hasn't looked himself this year. But really, all 4 of the guys in that little quad. Jackson Turley is a Virginia kid.
Yeah.
I knew some of my college teammates went on and work with a club there in Richmond, Virginia, and trained him, and they were big on him. I think I remember him beating Edmund Ruth at one point in high school or something like that. He was really tough coming out of high school, and he's had a couple impressive wins so far this season. So I like all 4 of those guys in that little pod, but I think whoever emerges, which in my bracket I had Caleb Romero, I think they could advance to the semis to wrestle Starocki because, like I said, Demetrius Romero is definitely tough as the 2 seed. I don't know that he's had the competition yet this year or has that marquee win to justify that 2 seed.
Well, I mean, so you didn't mention him, which I'm glad because you've mentioned all the other ones. I've said Dustin Plott from Oklahoma State is a guy I really am keeping an eye on. He has the 15th seed Thomas Flitz from Appalachian State. I think Plott wins that, and I think he gives Romero everything he can handle, to be honest. I would not be surprised at all to see a Plott, pull an upset there from the 18th seed. Another guy
just a true freshman, right?
Yeah, so a guy, who's just looked really good all throughout his career in high school. And, I just think those, like you said earlier, Oklahoma State, coached by the legend John Smith, those guys find ways to show up at the NCAA tournament. So I don't know. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dustin Plott ends up pulling some big upsets and ends up in the top 8. So we shall see. Tristan, let's go up to 184 pounds, where we have none other than Hayden Hidley, or not Hayden, Trent Hidley at the bottom half at the number 2 seed, but the number 1 seed is Aaron Brooks from Penn State. Now, it's interesting because these two wrestled in Fargo in the finals, and it was all Aaron Brooks. He teched him, I don't know if it was the first period or not, but he beat him pretty good, 10-0. Aaron Brooks has looked just absolutely phenomenal throughout his career at Penn State, and he's only looked better. Other Pennsylvania wrestlers outside of Trent Hidley, Dakota Gear from Oklahoma State, 15-3 on the year, is the 11th seed. He's another guy who was at Edinburgh by way of Franklin, state champ his junior year, was upset his senior year. Greg Harvey from Pitt, I feel like he's been around forever. He's a Boyertown native. Chris Weiler from Wisconsin, he's another one. He's from Biglerville, PA, but he wrestled at Wyman Seminary. He's a 13 seed, transferred from Lehigh to Wisconsin. And Dylan Oberman from Lehigh, from Southern. I wanted to say Southern Columbia, but it's not Southern Columbia. Sullivan County, same district, but just different schools. I really just think you look at the bracket, and Trent Hidley is that guy who has been wrestling hot as of recently. He had a great win in the ACC finals. Does he have enough to get to the finals, kind of like his brother did several years ago, when he made it to the finals? I don't know. I just have a feeling the Hidleys, man, he's going to raise the roof on Saturday night, potentially into the finals. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just on sheer talent and ability and the way he's wrestling alone. But I would say what is especially also helping him is I really like his draw in the bracket. I think they really overloaded the top half of the bracket here. I mean, if you go through it, you got Aaron Brooks, you got Jeremiah Kent from Missouri, who's tough. You got Venz, Rocky Jordan, Hunter Bolin, who might be the second best guy in this bracket. He has traded wins with Hidley, but I think he's beaten him more than he's lost. Nelson Brands, Weiler, Keckeisen. That top half is absolutely loaded. And then when you go down to the bottom, your 6 and 7 seeds are Poznansky from Rutgers and Britt Wilson from Northern Illinois. Like I said, not to take anything away from those guys, but not household names, not guys that have been on the podium before, or guys that have a lot of marquee wins. They're both they either younger guys or from more obscure conferences, haven't wrestled the same competition. So honestly, I see, if I'm just going through my quadrants here, I think you'll see a Brooks-Venz quarterfinal, which Venz, I think, is the only one who beat Brooks last year. So Brooks beat him this year, looked pretty good. I don't think he's getting touched by Venz this year, but that is just something interesting to note. I think Venz is the only one who gave Brooks a loss last season. And then Hunter Bolin, I'm really big on. I think, like I said, he might be second or third best guy in this bracket. I think he's going to reach the semifinals against Brooks, and I think he'll go through Keckeisen to do that. Although Chris Weiler, a kid I've known since he was probably 7 years old, he's actually in the Shippensburg area that I'm in now. He's really a gamer. I don't know how healthy he is. I saw him at Big Tens wrestling with a big wrap on his shoulder, but he was in the blood round 2 years ago at 197 and lost, I think, 2 ride-out matches. So he's been that close to being an All-American. Super talented kid. Would not at all be surprised to see him beat Keckeisen and be in the quarters against Bolin, as he was in the quarters 2 years ago, like I said. Louis Deprez is, I think, the one who really benefited from this bracket. His first 2 matches, I don't think he's going to be very challenged. Greg Harvey is definitely tough, but Deprez is just on that little higher tier right now. And then I see Gear upsetting this Poznansky kid from Rutgers, and I see that being a Deprez-Gear quarterfinal with Deprez winning that. And then I would say Trent. I think the Samuelson kid from Wyoming, who's a 10 seed, who's pretty tough. I could see him beating Britt Wilson, because I don't think Wilson has had a ton of great competition this year. So I could see a 2 against a 10 there. But like I said, I think Trent is going to have a couple. No match at the NCAAs is easy by any stretch, but I think he's going to have a couple matches almost to get rolling, get his momentum rolling. going into the semis, where I think his first real challenge will be Deprez.
Yeah, first thing when I saw the brackets, that was the first thing I said was, man, Trent really benefited from being on that bottom half. Where I agree with you, he can get the blood flowing, rust off, get all that rust off, whatever it is. This is again like Sammy Sasso. This is his first time at the NCAA tournament. He was supposed to be there last year, so this is his first time stepping on those blue mats. I agree with what you said about Louis Dupre from Binghamton. I just think he's too much for Greg Harvey, but I like Gear. Posnanski from Rutgers is he's a tough freshman, but I just think Gear just, again, I don't know if it's a John Smith in him, but I just like that Oklahoma State vibe that he has down there. And Taylor
Gear's
Venn,
also already been there in place before.
True, yeah, Gear's been there. Ven's as the 8th seed. I think he's going to come out to see Brooks. But all those top half guys are going to beat themselves up. Brands, if he can make it out, and Hunter Boland, those guys are all going to beat each other's up. Kekison, as you mentioned, even Chris Weiler, I'm not sure. So, I think Brooks is that guy on the top. But, I think Louis Deprez and Hidley, who we saw wrestle last year, probably could be the semifinal between that 2 and 3. I know that's not a bold prediction. They're 2 and 3 in the bracket, but, I don't necessarily see any busters, if you will, on the bottom half.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like I said, that middle top part is just an absolute buzzsaw with Bolin, Brands, Weiler, Keck Eisen, and the guy we even overlooked is Sammy Colbert.
Yeah,
he's down at 29. I think he was in the blood round at least once, maybe twice. He's been super talented. When he came out of high school, I think he was number 1 in the country. So, I mean, holy crap, that is just a stacked little or whatever you call it, quadrant of 8 guys. Whoever makes it out of that to the semis is a beast.
Yeah, you're right. I overlooked Sam Colbert as well because, like you said, he was a guy who's been close before, but kind of got overlooked a little bit. Rocky Jordan, he hasn't had the greatest of years, I don't think, and Nelson Brands, kind of the same way. Like, I'm not sure necessarily how well he's going to be wrestling here, but Sam Colbert, I that's probably one of the best first round matches with him and Kekison, I believe, will probably be one of the best first-round matches. Let's go up to 197 pounds. I'll switch it on the screen there for you. Miles Amin, new wrestler at 197. He's 6-0. He's your top seed. From Pennsylvania, we have Jake Jacobson from Lehigh, 7-3. He is your 16th seed by way of Stroudsburg, was a state champion at Stroudsburg. Max Shaw from North Carolina, from Thomas Jefferson. He's your 20th seed, 8-4 on the year. Colin McCracken from Kent State. He's from Waynesburg. Never won a state title, was a state medalist. He's 8-5 at the 29 seed. Greg Balsack, another guy who I feel like has been here forever. Him and Jake Wenzel, teammates at South Park. Balsack from Clarion, 11-1 on the year, 14 seed. Keep an eye on him. Chris Kober from Campbell, guy who I overlooked. He's from the Haverford School. I should have known that. He has an older brother who wrestled there, but he's your 22 seed. He is 6-0 in the year. And then, of course, Nino Bonacorsi from Pitt, 9-1 on the year. He's your 6th seed. That's all on the bottom half, including, so that's I'll call it the bottom half top quadrant, right? Then on the bottom half, right, you have Jake Woodley, Rocky Elam, first round. Great match. Then you have Michael Beard, Jacob Kuzer from Navy. Jacob Kozer is a guy from Northern York. Michael Beard's from Malvern Prep. Woodley from North Allegheny. Nino Bonacorsi from Bethel Park. A lot of talent there grouped in that 150 through 154 first-round matches. Tristan, what are your thoughts here at 197? And let's start with the bottom, because the bottom is just absolutely bananas, especially when you look at the Pennsylvania guys all being so bunched up together. In fact, that Michael Beard and Jacob Kozer first-round match is the only first Pennsylvania on Pennsylvania match that we have in the first round, which is nice, but, it's really loaded down there.
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is, Jeff, I'd be interested to get a stat on what's the record for the most amount of PA kids in an NCAA bracket, because this is incredible with 9. I don't know what the record is. I'd be interested to know, but that's got to be up there, I would say. 9 kids in a 33-man bracket, all from Pennsylvania. And we have 6 of them, 6 of probably maybe the best ones, are all sandwiched down there on the bottom, where they're either going to wrestle each other right off the bat, or they're going to wrestle each other if they both win or if they both lose. So could see a lot of PA on PA crime, unfortunately, here in the bottom half. But I think it's fascinating when you look at the bottom half of the bracket of just the potential of guys that you could see in the NCAA final and even in the semis. come Saturday night for the finals. Like I said, Kozer and Beard, I've known Kozer for quite a while. He's a really talented guy, really good on top, very physical. Beard, was the huge recruit coming out. Hasn't maybe reached, gotten those wins where he would justify that ranking yet in college, but everybody knows the talent is there. So it's almost just waiting for him to put it together, especially when Cale Sanderson is your head coach, So that could be a really good match out of the gate. And I think either one of those guys who wins could give Eric Schultz a pretty good match there in that 323 round of 16 match. Woodley, I think he's got his hands full in the first round with Rocky Elam, who's undefeated. Granted, Elam hasn't had a ton of tough competition. I was looking through his results. He is undefeated. He hasn't been tested by too many big name guys in this bracket. But that's one of the things about this year's NCAA tournament where you just don't know how good some of these guys really are. Like we talked about the other Missouri kid at 65, the true freshman whose name escapes me at the moment. Can never remember that. Keegan O'Toole. Undefeated. You just don't know. You haven't seen him wrestle anybody really outside the MAC or maybe even, these smaller schools. You just don't know where they're at. It's hard to gauge. But my best guess of a bracket, I think I have Elam coming out. I think he's going to be tested by Caffey, who's also really good and up a weight this year. But I think you're going to see a Schultz Elam quarterfinal. Could really see that going either way, but I guess you'll have to take Schultz all the way to the semis. And then the guy I'm really big on in this weight is Nino for this season. He was in the blood round as a freshman a few years ago. Obviously didn't get to compete last year and then bumped up to 197 this year. And with only one blemish to Trimble from NC State, he's looked really good. J.I. Yellow, who I think was – Jeff, I might be wrong, but I think he was like a 3 seed going into the tournament that eventually got canceled last year. Nino bumped into this weight class and has beaten him handedly twice this year. And so assuming he can get past him one more time there, most likely in that round of 16 matchup, I think it'll be a Nino Bolzak all Pennslvania quarterfinal. That's my bold prediction here for the bottom half. I think Bolzak, me and Rob were big on him. He was a friend of the podcast last year. Looked really good last season. He's 11-1 this year. Did have one loss to I think it was Ben Smith from Cleveland State. But other than that, I think he's going to upset Norfleet in 317, and I think Nino and him will meet in the quarterfinals. So
I hope you're right, because I definitely want to see Bolzak upset Norfleet. I think Norfleet is that's a tough match for him, right? Norfleet is a guy who's just finds ways to win at all times, but I think that's clearly a winnable match for Bolzak. I think I agree with you with Nino Bonacorsi. I think Nino's going to make it to the semifinals. And I think he probably is going to see Schultz from Nebraska, who's a 2nd seed. Woodley, I think, you had said how that's a tough draw for him, and it absolutely is with Rocky Elam. But I'm not going to count out Jake Woodley there. He's not had the season he quite wanted to this year, but I really do have faith that Jake Woodley's going to push Rocky Elam, potentially get the upset there. A guy we didn't talk about was AJ Ferrari from Oklahoma State. We could talk about him for an hour, just about him and him. What do you think? Dyson picked him as a guy who was going to win it back in November. Can AJ Ferrari, he's 15-1 a year, 4th seed. He's got Colin McCracken first round. I think he wins that. Tanner Sloan or Max Shaw in the next round. I think he wins that. Jacob Warner, Nick Reenan, which is also a crazy first round matchup. Can you believe Nick Reenan and Jacob Warner are wrestling in the first round? It's kind of crazy.
I can't believe Nick Reenan's still in college.
Well, that too. I don't know if Warner and Ferrari are there. I think that's just a matchup Ferrari's never seen before, and I think Warner's just is so good at slowing guys down, slowing offense down, and really good off his re-attack. So, I maybe like Warner there. Miles Amin, you got to like him as well after seeing him win the Big Ten, but I don't know, Tristan, I really don't. And I think there's a handful of guys here can win it. It's definitely more of the wide open bracket than we've seen in the other ones.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as my first observation, is I think this is by far the hardest bracket to pick. Just when your number 1 seed has only wrestled really, he's only 6-0, but I think he even started the year at 74. I think he could be wrong, but I think he just bumped up to 97 here, like maybe a few weeks ago. I don't think he's really been there that long, and even if he has, this is obviously a shortened season, so um, it's just kind of crazy. And then you have a guy like Noah Adams that was either undefeated or only had one loss and was going to be the 1 seed last year, and now he's a 9. But his only 3 losses are to the exact same guy who he ironically drew in the round of 16. It's just there's so much head scratching stuff here at 197 that makes it so hard to pick. But I will say about this bracket that it kind of reminds me of, I think it was the 165 weight we were talking about and 74. There's kind of a theme through these brackets that I think they overloaded the top half of many of these brackets, and the bottom half you're seeing some guys who almost looks like they're not, like I said, no match is going to be easy, but they're definitely getting an easier path to the finals perhaps. When you look at the 97 top half between Amin, Noah Adams, like I said, who was going to be the 1 seed last year, Buchanan, who's beaten Adams 3 times, you got Warner, Renan, Lucas Davison from Northwestern is pretty tough. He just beat Beard the other day at Big Tens. And then Tanner Sloan was undefeated going into the Big 12 and was dominant. And if you want to talk about a 97-pounder that gets bonus points, he was tech falling most of the kids he wrestled. And, if not for that 7-1 loss to Ferrari, which I didn't see the match, I don't know, how badly he actually got dominated or if the score just looked that way. It's ironic that those two also drew each other in the round of 16. And my biggest question there, like you said about Ferrari, is how healthy is Sloan? Because after he took that 7-1 loss, he then got pinned and then medical forfeited his way out. And I had heard a rumor that he was banged up. So if he's healthy, I wouldn't be shocked if he flips that loss and beats Ferrari. I'm pretty big on Tanner Sloan. If not, I think similarly to what you said, I think a lot of people are penciling Ferrari going all the way to the semis. But I think Jacob Warner is going to slow him down. And I watched him beat Rashid last year in that big Iowa Penn State dual meet where he just finds a way to just stay in really good position and score off a front headlock or something like that. And I don't know if that match goes the distance, his gas tank might prevail. And I think I have Amin and Warner in the semis there in the top half of 97.
And you mentioned it, Noah Adams, right? I mean, that's a guy who, at one time was number one in the nation most of the year, right? And now he's a 9 seed, and should he make it out to the quarterfinals, he's going to get the number 1 seed, Miles Amin. So there's a lot of question marks here. There's a lot of older guys with Nick Renan and younger guys with AJ Ferrari, right? And some in-betweeners as well, like Nino Bonacorsi, Jake Woodley, Michael Beard. So I'm excited to see how it all shakes out. With 9 guys from Pennsylvania, I'm thinking we're going to have a couple All-Americans. I'm thinking Nino Bonacorsi is going to punch through. Michael Beard, maybe an outside shot. Jake Woodley, outside shot. I don't know. Greg Bolsack is a guy who I think probably is outside of Nino, probably one of the better choices to get an All-American finish. But again, I'm not sleeping on Jake Woodley. I've just seen him too much to know how talented he is, and I don't think his record indicates how much he really is capable of winning here. And it is an entire new season, right? We've seen that before. Guys coming in with not so great records and all of a sudden go on a run and they get hot. So we shall see very soon. But 197 is probably one of my favorite brackets for that reason, that there is so much wide openness. So let's go up to heavyweight, our final weight class. At the top, we have Gable Stevenson from Minnesota. From Pennsylvania, we have Jordan Wood from Lehigh, who's 7-1 on the year, 8th seed, which it's kind of surprising because if you would have told me a couple years ago that in 2021 Jordan Wood wouldn't be a top 4 seed, I would have been kind of surprised. Also, Joey Doyle from Binghamton, who's the 30th seed out of Council Rock South. He's 2-2. Ethan Laird from Ryder, 8-1 on the year, 7th seed. Michael McElvavy from Citadel, who's from Peters Township. Hunter Kaka, 2-time state champ out of Sun Valley from Virginia Tech. He's your 18th seed at 9-2. Andrew Gunning from Bethlehem Liberty, 4-4. North Carolina, 31 seed. Obviously, we look at the seedings, and Jordan Wood, Ethan Laird are those guys. The rest are kind of, Joe Doyle and Andrew Gunning, not so great draws there with Mason Parris in the first round for Gunning, and Stencil from Central Michigan for Doyle. But I like Laird. I think he can get out to probably see Deontay Wilson and get a win there. I don't know. Jordan Wood, on the other hand, he's not in a great position with Kirkfleet at the top half with him. That's going to be a huge test for him. And Nathan Traxler, that first round is not going to be an easy match either. So, Tristan, what are your thoughts on a journeyman like Jordan Wood and where he's going to finish?
I think it's really all going to come down to. I agree with you. Traxler is a tough first round draw. I think he'll get by him. I think it's going to depend on the Kirkfleet match. I don't know if I'm saying that name right or not. I've never understood how to say that name. But he's just such an unknown too. He's just such a young guy, like similar to what I was saying about some of these other guys. He's had such a small sample size. We know how good he is, on the international freestyle circuit and all that. But we haven't really got to see him wrestle much folk style. So I think that could be a really good match, a really interesting match. Really don't know who's going to win that. But I would say whichever one of those guys makes it out to the quarterfinal, I would say they obviously have a really good chance, and I like who falls into their bracket from there. So I would say Wood's biggest test is going to be getting by Kirkfleet there in the 327 bout. Obviously, don't think either one of those guys is going to touch Gable Steveson, but when they drop down into the consies, I think they'll likely see Trent Hilger, who was a really tough heavyweight, hasn't quite had that same season this year so far, or you're going to see probably the Elam kid from Missouri, who's 10-4, who I think is also a beatable, winnable match for either one of those guys. So if Penn State's trying to, somehow find a way to beat Iowa in this team race, then Kirkfleet trying to get on the podium is a huge factor for them. But I think you'd obviously have to take the veteran Jordan Wood, and if he makes it to the quarters, I like his chances of getting on the podium.
Yeah, I mean, I love Jordan Wood. I like him as a person. I like him as a wrestler. I think he's gonna have a hard time with Kirkfleet. I think he's just, I don't know. He's kind of in another gear. I think Gable Stevenson is clearly the guy everyone's chasing. I think he's probably outside of Spencer Lee the best wrestler in the tournament. Mason Parris is the clear number 2 here. I think it's going to be a Stevenson Parris finals. And I hope Jordan Wood's able to punch through. Ethan Laird is the guy I'm really curious about. Coming up from 197 last year, he had a win over Jake Woodley at the NCAA tournament. I like him. He's had a good year, but he's gonna be wrestling some pretty tough heavyweights in St. Louis. So it's like how far can he take it? And some pretty big heavyweights. And don't sleep on Hunter Katka either. 9-2, true freshman for Virginia Tech. Guy with a lot of experience. He's made a world team. In freestyle. So is Jordan Wood. So it's very similar kind of trajectories for him and Jordan Wood, both out of District 1 in Pennsylvania. So my questions here are, can Jordan Wood punch through to get to a top 4, top 5 finish? And Ethan Laird, is his new weight class at 285 beneficial for him, and can he get into the All-American round as a 7th seed? So a lot of questions here. Tristan, final thoughts on heavyweight.
I think both those guys can place. Laird obviously is a 7 seed, so just by the way the bracket is laid out, logic would dictate that he is going to be on the podium. I think Katka is, my bold prediction. I think he will All-American.
Wow.
I think he wins that first match against Isley. Once he probably won't get past Paris, but once he drops down, I like the next couple matches he has. Deontay Wilson, most likely, if the bracket holds true, would be who he would get, who he just lost to in a rideout. That's definitely a flippable match, especially a heavyweight rideout match. That could go either way. And then in his falling down there from the consies, I think most likely he would get Colton Schultz from Arizona State, who, was a number 1 guy in the country coming out of high school, super talented, but he's also a very young guy that has not wrestled at the NCAA tournament. And I don't know that he has had quite a test at heavyweight yet either. So that's kind of a battle of, I don't know, Jeff, you might know off the top of your head if Schultz and Katka have wrestled before, in those freestyle things in high school. They're around the same weight. I know that, but that's just a match that I could definitely see Katka getting the better of him. He's not getting some veteran guy like a Cassiope coming down in the blood round. I think he's getting another pretty much freshman who's wrestling in the same, the first time at NCAAs. So bold prediction, but I could see him doing it.
Schultz is the real deal. So I mean, Schultz is the real deal. I would not be.
I know he's good. I don't know that he's been tested yet. I was looking through his results the other day. Maybe I overlooked something, but
no,
I don't
think
see any wins yet in college that made me think like this guy is a contender here.
I think they're coming. I think they're coming this weekend. So
you're probably right.
Colin Schultz is he's a real deal. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him wrestle to his seed there. So But yeah, we will find out here soon, Tristan. Wrestling starts tomorrow. 50 wrestlers from Pennsylvania will be taking the mats. We'll be covering all of them throughout the entire tournament. So make sure you stay tuned in to PA Power Wrestling on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those places. And of course on Rockfin, where we'll be having all the first round matches and where all the Pennsylvania wrestlers are going to be wrestling tomorrow morning. We're going to have that on Rockfin. You can see it all. Tristan, are you gonna watch all the rounds or what? Are you got work or are you gonna tune in?
I'm gonna do my best to tune in. Yeah, we're doing virtual school for this week, so
Okay.
when I'm not in class, I'll be doing my best to keep up with it and follow along. And then obviously, me and you gonna hop on here at some point, or just get on the airwaves and talk about what we've seen.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I look forward to it. Appreciate your time tonight. Great first show together. I thought
Yeah,
we did a decent job, considering we had never done a show together before. So, and also considering I'm a new father and my head's still in high school, so it's nice to talk some college, and I can't wait for the next 3 days. So we'll stay tuned because Tristan and I are going to be bringing some recaps, reactions throughout the weekend, and should be a lot of fun. So thanks again, Tristan.
thanks for having me. Yep, look forward to it.
See ya.